What's up, guys? It's TheDuckChris, and I'm here to record my first ramble. Going to be talking about overloads today. As with all rambles, gameplay is not really important, but just something that you can watch if you want to. So enjoy some chin hunting on my new group account. So overloads. Wanted to talk about them because I feel like it's a topic that we're kind of approaching in terms of game progression. A lot of people know about overloads because of pre-EOC and because of the effect that they had on the game in terms of difficulty, making everything a bit easier because they were just so powerful. So I wanted to talk about a couple ways that we could introduce overloads to OSRS and not have it be, too crazy. So let's get started. Number one would be in a similar way to other potions that we've introduced in the past. So take, for example, Bastion Pots from TOB. They came in with a new secondary item that was the Vials of Blood. And you could only get these vials from TOB. So it was had a good reason why they couldn't be obtained before that. And you had to do the quest to learn about them. But ultimately, once they came out, everyone could use them. That was the main, of course. Everyone who could buy them because they were tradable and they were just standard potions. But they did have a secondary item that needed to be farmed from the boss. So for the purposes of this video, let's discuss overloads as if they were to come from Raids 3. So we could have another item, vials of Elid water or something like that, and you can make overloads with that. And everyone would be able to buy them, and it would be pretty much the same as Bastion Pots. Now, this is pretty strong, and it's one reason why, overloads, when they come in, could just really upset the meta, because if everyone's able to buy them right off the bat, then everyone just increases their DPS quite a lot. Another way that you could do this that's similar is the way that we got Divine Potions. So Divine Potions, are very similar to overloads in that they keep your stats boosted the whole time, except they don't reboost, so you can't use brews with them. And they came in again through the addition of a secondary item, but instead of it just being a singular boss drop, crystal shards are obtainable everywhere, basically from skilling, PVM, mini games, if you want to call Volcano a mini game. So that's another way that it could come in. Basically, not even combat restricted, anyone can get them as long as they can get to the area, finish the quest. So maybe the stuff around Raids 3, there's some new Slayer monsters or something, there's some new skilling methods in Menaphos if that comes out, and that could drop something Tears of the Elid, that is a stackable item, and you use those to make overloads. Again, this could be tradable or untradable in terms of final product, but just another way that the secondary item could come in. If you wanted to say, fuck Herblore, Herblore is not important, just give me the potions, you could do it as a straight monster drop. So that's kind of method number 3. And this is not really something we've seen in OSRS very much, because even though we do have monsters that give potions as drops, for example, God War's Dungeon gives brews, restores Zami brews, range pots from Arma. You can still make those potions yourself. Although Nightmare does drop Sandfuse serums, and pretty much no one makes those because they're just such a pain in the ass to make. So they're pretty much they come from Nightmare and other boss drops like that, and that's why they have such a high price. So if you could imagine, one of the drops from Raids 3 is 100 noted overloads. And it's a pretty rare drop, but it's one that would be really sought after because everyone's yes, I finally got my overloads. And that would be something that would, again, keep the content alive, because then you'd have to keep going back and farming for overloads on an iron if it's untradeable, or if it's tradable even... and then on a main, only if it's untradeable, you would have to go back. So that's something that could work, would definitely make it harder to get in terms of you'd have to be able to get to raids 3 before you can use overloads. So that's something that could make it more prestigious, and also make it so that, you know, you have to figure out where you want to use them, and you can't just use them everywhere because you have a limited supply. Another way that you could do that in terms of getting the potion straight from somewhere is to have a Herblore minigame of some sorts. So maybe you had something like the Farming Guild, where you have farming contracts, but instead it was Herblore contracts, and you had to deliver potions to various people around the world, kind of like a gnome restaurant, I guess. So you had a combination gnome restaurant farming contract where you have to make potions and deliver them around the world, and then your reward is to trade in points for overloads. So it could be a sync to your normal potions, and then you get overloads out of it. And again, you could combine this with some of the earlier methods, like you could instead get secondary ingredients from the minigame instead of just the raw potions. And again, they could be tradable or untradeable. And we'll go over like the tradable thing a little bit later, but I just wanted to get the methods out of the way, and then we could talk about what's good or bad about them. So after just the monster drops comes the big brain methods, and like this is the stuff that I think has a real potential, is like tradable scrolls to unlock things. So one example could be you unlock the ability to make the potions, and this is pretty basic. You know, you as a Herblore master, you've never heard of overloads. You're 99 Herblore right now and you can't make overloads, but once you do raids 3, you find a scroll of ancient Herblore, and it tells you the method to make overloads. Maybe with the new secondary ingredient, maybe not, you know, who cares? But it just tells you how to make them, and once you read the scroll, you can make them. And this could be a pretty rare scroll. So it could be like a really sought after item that everyone's going to want. And of course, it could be tradable also for mains to give to people who maybe don't want to do raid 3, but they have extra money. Maybe once you get a dupe, you pass it along. Or it could be untradeable, and it could just be like the Forecast said, where it's like an untradeable upgrade, and you get it after doing the content for a little bit. You know, it doesn't have to be that rare, but it's just like, welcome to raids 3 as a reward for doing some KC. Now you get overloads. So that could be one method. But an even more interesting method, in my opinion, is an unlock scroll that would allow you to drink overloads. So it could be like a blessing of the Elid, and it's a scroll that when you read it, it permanently blesses you so that you're able to drink overloads. And basically, if you try to drink them without unlocking the ability, it'll say like, oh, you're too weak to survive the power of this potion, and you just can't drink it. So this way, like, overloads could still be tradable, but you also have to unlock the ability to use them. And that could be, again, a very complicated, a very expensive unlock. And that way, like, not everyone would be able to use overloads, but you wouldn't have to make mains make their own potions for DPS increase, because that's never really been what main PVM is about. You know, you've always been able to buy your own potions and trade for your own potions, so that, you know, definitely goes in that spirit. So this could be one way to basically just make overloads come in the game being hard to get, but at the same time fit within the current framework of Herblore. So that's kind of all of the methods I could think of. It's about 8 different methods. Obviously, you know, you can say whether they're tradable or untradeable within those methods, and it like gets a bit more complicated. And maybe we'll talk about that now. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about whether or not they should be tradable is because we have the idea of combat skills in RuneScape. So our skills add to our combat level in terms of how dangerous we are and how, you know, proficient at combat we are. and all of our combat skills increase that amount. Everything else, while it may offer situational, benefits, like for example, for Slayer, you get Slayer Helm. The on Slayer task makes you more powerful, and certain things like that. Questing obviously makes you more powerful if you get good upgrades. But overall, your combat level is a good example of how hard you can hit. So if you make untradeable potions that require a high Herblore level, then Herblore basically becomes a skill that you have to level in order to reach your maximum combat potential. And then Herblore basically is a combat skill. Now, one thing about this that we should all realize is that for Iron Men, this is already the case. Unless you got all of your potions specifically from Grotesque Guardians, I think is the only monster that drops a super combat, or KQ, and ranging potions from Grotesque Guardians again, or Kriara, or something like that. Most of the time, your Herblore level is going to be essential for maximum DPS on an Iron Man, because you have to make your own potions. So in terms of should this be a thing for mains, obviously it can be. We're used to it from Iron Man. We know that making your own potions is definitely something that you want to be able to do on all accounts. For example, in Chambers of Xeric, you want to be able to make your overloads and your brews in there, and even though you can get them from the monsters, it's just more reliable to be able to make them. And even though you can trade them on mains, if you're soloing, you want to be able to make your own potions, and in that area, it's totally fine, and everyone accepts that you need a decent Herblore level to be maximum proficiency in combat. So that is something that we could do as mains, but we don't have to. As I pointed out, there's definitely methods where you can still have tradable overloads, but make it so that not everyone, Jimmy on the street can get them. And then one of the reasons that you want to talk about that is if you want overloads to be tradable, you have to think about the price, right? You can't make it too expensive, because then people just aren't going to have fun using them. If you make it 300k per potion or more, it's going to ruin the profit at a lot of bosses. And they're going to be well, people will use them for pet hunting and stuff, but ultimately it's just not feasible to use them. And at that point, what's really the point of adding them? It's still an option, obviously, if you want to just add them for speedruns or whatever, but I think that's really not that interesting. So in terms of price gatekeeping, I think that's not really the way to go. So if you want to have them tradable and you want to have them at a good price, then that means everyone should be able to use them. Which is, maybe you don't want that, because then if everyone's using overloads, then suddenly the power spike jumps a lot, because potions, are really strong compared to other DPS increases. If you have another +1 level, that's a lot more than having +1 strength bonus. At least I'm pretty sure. I'm not a DPS calculator incarnate, so don't really quote me on that, but that's my general sense. So that's another thing that we could talk about too, is the power level. So one thing that's really interesting about the Cox overloads is that they come in 3 different power levels. So when overloads originally came out, they were the same level as extreme potions, and extreme potions were better than super potions, so pretty much better than anything we have right now. And another key feature of the overloads that, in case you didn't know, they reboosted your stats every 15 seconds. So basically, it was the new strongest potion, and you could use brews with it, and basically it was just extremely busted. So when we make our overloads, I think the boost every 15 seconds is definitely something that people like. It's part of the main appeal of overloads, but the power level is negotiable for sure. We don't have to make overloads the same level as extreme potions. And I think Jagex knew this when they introduced super combat potions, which are just combined super attack, super strength, and super defense. So we obviously don't have to have overloads that are extreme. They could just be super. But you could even take that a bit further and say, well, because overloads are so powerful in terms of not needing to use restores every time you brew and having basically lossless healing if you like brew right before the reboost, then you could even make it less than a super potion. So, you know, a super attack, super strength boost to what, 118, I think, so from 99. So what if you had it boost to only 115 with an overload? That would be a pretty significant drop in terms of the number one PVMers would definitely want to still use super potions. But there's definitely a lot of scenarios where you would want the overload effect at least as a backup, and so it would still be useful. So the power level is definitely negotiable. Yeah. So I don't know really too much else to talk about. Obviously, overloads are a contentious issue. It's like something that people have said just made the game way too easy. But I think it's very interesting, especially in terms of like a potion that everyone wants. It's like the top tier potion. And, you know, maybe it's a reason to get your Herblore up to 99. If you're a main needing to make them, or if you're an iron or whatever, basically, even if it's just profitable to make them with 99 Herblore or something like that. So I don't know. Also with Next coming out, something that reboosts your stats would definitely be helpful, because as far as I know, on her smoke phase, the first phase, she tends to drop your stats a lot. And we don't really have any bosses like that in RuneScape right now in old school in terms of dropping your stats, because everyone just hates it, because there's no counterplay except for chugging restores, which is very expensive and annoying. So if you had something that basically encouraged overload usage, it would you know, give you another reason to get those, which would be another interesting aspect of gameplay, I think. So let me know what you think in terms of overloads. Does it fit in old school? Does any of the ways that I described it coming in be an interesting way? Oh man, I got an imp. Or can you think of something else that would be more interesting or more balanced? And if so, yeah, leave a comment for sure. Let me know. Otherwise, thank you for listening. This has been the first ramble, hopefully of many, and we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I'm gonna finish off this book of knowledge right here, and we'll hit the road. So yeah, overloads, I think they're good. I think they would be a good addition to the game as long as it's balanced like this. Okay, let's get this book and let's hit the road. All right, bye.